Maya is a favorite topic of conspiracy theory supporters and all of our famous TV channels with crazy plots. The point is the countless number of secrets left by the mysterious people. How did they have such an advanced calendar and the most accurate calculations of the position of the planets? How did the Maya, not knowing the wheel, manage to build huge pyramids? And most importantly, why in the 10th century did a powerful and developed civilization suddenly disappear? In answer to these questions, piles of theories related to aliens, time travelers, and magic are built up. And in the next couple of minutes, we're going to answer some basic questions from Mayan life. Don't worry, tinfoil hats won't be necessary because the main mystery of the Maya is that there are no mysteries. Archaeologists and scientists have long ago figured out everything, and the only problem is that no one wants to listen to them. It's much more fun to come up with idiotic theories, isn't it? In the next couple of minutes, we're going to smash them and replace them with reality. And we'll be joined by our traditional guest, Raul Jimenez. The name is not exactly Mayan, but their language is a bit difficult to pronounce, so let's not torture your ears. After all, you don't want to hear about the adventures of Kukulkan Fkunapuhuij Balanka, do you? And in general, the sound of the classical Mayan language from antiquity, we do not know very well. So let it be Mexican, Raul. At least in tribute to modern Mexico, on the territory of which the Maya lived in the past. Their state was located mainly on the territory of the Yucatan Peninsula, but in different epochs, they touched modern Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and even Honduras. It is somewhere around 600 AD, and Raul is standing in the middle of the legendary city of Chichen Itza, which is included in the updated list of the 7 wonders of the world. The dating is the first important detail that few people know. The Maya are not ancient Egypt or the Sumerians. They are a people who lived relatively not so long ago. Let the rudiments of state formations and outlined in the Yucatan from 2000 BC, directly the Mayan civilization appeared much later. It is traditionally considered that the pre-classical period ended only by 250 AD, and the golden age of the Maya experienced even later, from the 3rd to 6th centuries, that is, after the division of the Roman Empire in Europe. This is the first trap, and the second one follows immediately. There was no Mayan empire or superstate. Maya should be called a civilization because this organization of city-states, which were not always getting along with each other, although they had a similar culture and language. By the way, one of the theories of disappearance exactly says that the Maya banally killed each other. In reality, it is not so, but the fact of bloody internal wars is obvious, just as it is obvious that our Raul did not call himself Maya. The term Maya in general became widely used after the records of Columbus, to whom the locals introduced themselves as inhabitants of the province of Mayan. Well, Raul is a citizen of Chichen Itza, one of the largest and most beautiful Mayan cities. Iron and high technology this people did not know, which did not prevent them from creating beautiful architectural masterpieces. Guys just took stones, limestone, wood, and everything that comes to hand and processed them with sand and water. And then, using advanced knowledge of mathematics and geometry, they built beautiful houses and palaces, some of which stand, by the way, to this day. As well as in ancient Egypt, for the most part, pyramids were erected for nobility and rulers, thus using them as platforms for astronomical observations. But for our Raul, it's not a matter of concern. He is a simple laborer and a typical member of Mayan society. As we have already mentioned, the territories consisted of city-states, and on their outskirts, families lived, uniting in groups for land cultivation. Despite the fact that Yucatan is a territory with a tropical climate, with water not being very abundant, it did not prevent the Maya from using underground springs, and where there are rivers, they built reservoirs and irrigation canals. The technologies used by the Maya for agriculture are very advanced, and despite the relative scarcity of territories, allowed them to survive. Our Raul mainly grows and eats corn. It was the main product for the Maya due to its unpretentiousness and satiety. The matter went so far that one of the main gods in the Mayan pantheon was the god of corn, and they themselves believed that it was from corn flour that the first man was once molded. The Maya approached the harvest very responsibly. Because of the unstable climate, irrigated land was constantly changing so that something would sprout somewhere. This forced families to periodically change their place of residence, and in the free time from the harvest, our Raul is involved in public works and of course service in the army. Each city and United Cities had a strict hierarchy with kings and a bunch of bureaucrats, but as such a regular army was not available up to the last stages of Maya existence. Basically, the rulers called up simple people on a compulsory basis, and by analogy with Egypt, it did not cause any questions. The kings here were considered viceroys of gods, of which the Maya had several thousand. Even for different kinds of deaths, there were separate gods. for the cyclic nature of the world is the main thing for our Raul and all Maya. Here we will reveal the reason why everyone was waiting for the end of the world in 2012. The Mayans were very fond of astronomy. It was practiced by a special class of priests, and the cosmos was intertwined with both religion and science. For example, the Mayans calculated that Venus completes a full cycle of orbital motion in 584 days. According to modern calculations, the figure is 583.9 days. That is 1,000 and 1,500 years ago. The Mayans had a terrifying accuracy of calculations. The same can be said for other celestial bodies. The Mayans didn't just study the phases of the moon, they also understood how they affected nature. Not surprisingly, such coincidences in the behavior of celestial bodies shocked the people, and they began to worship them while adapting their lives accordingly. For example, the invention of the calendar, and not just one but two at once. The Mayans had a public long calendar and a ritual short calendar. The long calendar was extremely accurate, equaling 365 days, divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with an additional month of 5 days. Interestingly, the first day of the month was measured not by the number 1, but by 0, an invention attributed to the Maya due to their use of a 20-character system that ends with the number 19.
This video is brought to you by Thorum. Take a look at this rings. They have rings made from 4 billion-year-old Gibeon meteorite and genuine 65 million-year-old T-Rex bone. If you are a fan of Vikings, they have Odin ring, the Norse god of war, the Thor ring, and all of them are crafted by hand. Head the link in the comments and use promo code LIVINGHISTORY to get 20% off a truly unique ring.
The ritual short calendar, known as Xolkin, consisted of 260 days, with 13 months of 20 days each. It was mainly used for religious ceremonies and various predictions of good and bad days. The 5 extra days from the long calendar were considered inauspicious. There was no particular confusion. Agriculture and most of the population lived according to the standard long calendar, while the short one was mostly left to the priests. There are disputes about it, as it is not clear where the number 260 comes from. So far, the most plausible theory is that this is the length of women's pregnancy, give or take. This is where the idea of the end of the world in 2012 comes from. As you remember, the Mayans believed in the cyclical nature of celestial bodies and had a clear calendar. They also fitted mythology to this cause, dividing the universe itself into eras lasting about 5,200 years, divided into 13 small periods, and invariably accompanied by an apocalypse that wiped out all living things. According to the Maya, our era began somewhere in 3114 BC after a terrible flood, when the sky fell to the earth and became very dark. Logically, hypotheses arise from a large volcanic eruption recorded in the past, which brought a tsunami with volcanic dust, blocking sunlight. The Mayan era was supposed to end in 2012. Unfortunately, it did not come to pass, and the only interesting thing to pay attention to is the choice of the length of the era in 5,200 years, and what cataclysm so shocked the Mayan ancestors 5,000 years ago. Nevertheless, our Raul believed in his gods and mythology very much. Here lies another analogy with ancient Egypt. There, pyramids were built sincerely believing that the richer the pharaoh, the richer the inhabitants. The Maya built pyramids with the same belief, thinking that it would make the gods rejoice, despite the fact that their own version of mythology existed in almost every city-state, where the king of that particular city was considered the descendant of the gods who created all living things. According to some historians, the Maya created beautiful bas-reliefs and architectural marvels just for the pleasure of the gods, not solely for the sake of art. Also, for the pleasure of the gods, our Raul and every single Maya played ball. In Chichen Itza alone, there are 7 stadiums, and excavations throughout the civilization confirm that the ball game for the Maya was of great importance. The exact rules of the game have not been fully known, but there is every reason to say that it was a hybrid of soccer and volleyball, where teams held a rubber ball in the air, throwing it with blows to each other. By the way, the balls were quite heavy, and players often wore hoops to make the task easier. A little later, rings were attached to the walls, introducing some elements similar to modern basketball into the game. Again, all of this was ritualistic in nature, though the exact purpose of the rituals is not fully known. Records indicate that both losing and winning teams were sacrificed, which is a sad part of Mayan history because they did practice human sacrifice, usually of captured captives from other cities. While there was no slavery as such in the civilization, captives were often considered partly in that category. Now let's discuss how such a technologically advanced people with great knowledge in craft and astronomy suddenly disappeared. First, let's clarify that the Mayans didn't disappear anywhere. They live to this day, being an ethnos on the territory of Mexico and Yucatan. Their cities simply fell into disrepair, which was noted by the first Spaniards who arrived on the continent. Wanting to conquer the territory, they saw that most of it was done for them, and large cities turned into lifeless deserts. This misconception led to the myth that the Maya, experiencing a golden age, magically disappeared on the border of the 10th and 11th centuries. But in reality, everything is simpler and more prosaic. Despite the decline, the conquistadors still had to fight with the remnants of the Maya, and some of their descendants, as we have already mentioned, quietly live to this day. There are many theories: fratricidal wars, aliens, and even epidemics. The most popular theory states that in the Maya lands, which were not too fertile, terrible droughts occurred, and in some territories there was no rain for years. The most powerful drought lasted 95 years, and one can only imagine the degree of damage to the poor civilization. As one can easily guess, this led to wild famine and the migration of people, leaving entire cities empty. The fact of the drought is documented by archeologists who studied the strata of those times. Opponents of the theory argued that if it were an ecological disaster, it is not clear why it only affected the south, while in the north, the Maya continued to develop. However, modern radiocarbon analysis has put an end to the controversy. Droughts affected the north as well, but the Maya there managed to hold on for some time, engaging in wars between cities, fighting for resources. So the reasons for the disappearance of this huge civilization were a combination of environmental and purely human factors. And the reason for the birth of most of the rumors were the same Spaniards, as the church instructed them to burn all the books and records in the conquered territories. Only 4 books survived, and there are no mysteries in them. It was the Europeans who destroyed most of the Maya's records and let centuries of their labor go into the bonfire. However, as you now realize, armed with modern methods, scientists have already solved almost all the riddles. There are only purely down-to-earth things left to consider, like how the Maya created pyramids without using draft animals and wheels. However, there are answers to this as well. The Maya built great roads and mostly relied on human power. There are tons of statues depicting people pulling huge loads on their backs, so they did not need aliens. The people, as we have already mentioned, considered such hard labor as a gift to the gods. I think we'll stop here. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment. We will try to answer them all. See you again, folks.